We are so glad that you're here. So welcome. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about helping youth get unstuck. So as you guys join in, I would love for you guys to enter in where you're coming from. And then also, why don't you enter in? I'd love to see who on this call is actually working with youth, with children, with teens, with young adults. And also, if you're a parent of youth, of teens and young adults, we'd love to see who's on the call with us. So feel free to put that as well. My name is Megan Perez. I'm the U.S. Program Manager for Trauma Healing Institute. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about helping youth get unstuck. First, what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you what we've been learning from our research over the past couple of years at American Bible Society. In 2023, Trauma Healing in the U.S., we did a survey with pastors, over 1,000 pastors across the U.S. And we learned a lot from this study. But some of the insights that we gathered were pretty surprising. So one of the things that we found that pastors in this research identified teens in their church as the demographic with the highest levels of trauma. And, this was confirmed also in 2024 when the American Bible Society did the State of the Bible research. What they found was 52% of Gen Z respondents said that they or an immediate family member had experienced trauma. And what was also surprising is of that group that said, yes, I have experienced trauma, 43% rated the continuing effects of that trauma as severe. For the past couple of years, the State of the Bible research at American Bible Society has looked into Gen Z and the effects of things such as stress, anxiety, and depression. And over the past couple of years, this continues to be Gen Z continues to have the highest levels of stress, anxiety, and depression amongst all generations. So for us, as we learned about this research, as we heard from pastors across the United States, the need was clear. They need more resources geared towards teens and youth. Now, the Trauma Healing Institute, we have had a robust trauma healing curriculum for teens and children, and which requires a significant amount of training. But because the need was so great that for these resources and practical tools, we needed to develop something that was that youth leaders could implement, that they could access, and that there were effective resources that could be deployed immediately. So today we have Brianna Leindecker joining us, and she is the Senior Manager for Programs and Products at Trauma Healing Institute. Bree's going to be talking to us and walking through some of the new resources that we've been recently developing for our youth. Now, you may have known Misty Bodkins was going to be presenting. She had a family situation, and so that arose. So our prayers are with you, Misty, and your family today. But we want to welcome up Bree. Bree, thank you. We are excited to hear what you have to share with us about the new resources to help our youth get unstuck. Bree?
Thank you, Megan, and hello, everyone. It is great to be with you again. If this is your second time joining one of our Lunch and Learns, welcome back. But if this is your first time, we're really glad that you're here. And you can find a recording of the previous Lunch and Learn that we did last month on our YouTube channel. So I am going to walk you through today the different resources that Trauma Healing Institute has created and has made available for children and teens. But before I dive into that, I want to remind us all what the mission is of Trauma Healing Institute. Our mission is to help the church address the effects of trauma, grief, and loss with resources that integrate both biblical principles and mental health best practices. And this includes creating resources for our younger generations. And all of the resources that I am going to show you today first and foremost honor the Bible, honor scripture, but they also have intentionally woven mental health best practices throughout their creation and throughout their use as well. Another reminder is there are 3 different types of resources that the Trauma Healing Institute creates. And we're going to take a look at all 3 of these categories specifically for youth today. But the first is small group programs. These are program curricula specifically designed to bring together small groups of teens, of children, that is led by a trained and certified facilitator. And the purpose of these small group programs are to help youth connect with God, connect with one another, and to engage with Scripture in transformative ways. The second category is what we call Bible-based trauma healing resources. These are resources that can be used by anyone and everyone. Absolutely no certification is required. They're often meant to give a taste of what Trauma Healing Institute has to offer. They're easily accessible and they are available in a variety of formats. And then finally, Trauma Healing Institute also offers crisis response tools. Now, these are often provided in a toolkit format. And the purpose of these tools, unlike small group programs, is to help people cope in the midst of crisis, of disasters, of situations. Keeping in mind, small group programs are meant to help people heal. Crisis response tools are meant to help people cope. What do they need in the moment to help them walk through this situation? So with that being said, the big question that we're going to address today is what children and youth resources, programs, and materials does Trauma Healing Institute offer? And even more so, where can you find them? Here is a quick snapshot of the resources that we're going to walk through today. And like I said, all 3 categories, small group programs, crisis response resources, and Bible-based resources are reflected on this slide here. The first thing that I want to walk through is our small group programs. Trauma Healing Institute offers 2 different small group programs, one specifically designed for children, one specifically designed for teenagers. If you're unfamiliar with these programs and the training paths, this information is all laid out for you on the Trauma Healing Institute website. To find an explanation of their training modalities, you can log in. You visit traumahealinginstitute.org, click log in at the top of the screen, sign in with your primary email address, which is the email address that you use to sign up for your very first training. After you log in, you'll see that there is a training button on the left side of the navigation panel. After you click that, you'll have the option, do you want to learn about adults, about children, or about teens? And you'll see children and teens training modalities. But a very brief synopsis for you, they're pretty similar. Both programs, the first step is you have to attend an initial equipping. And this initial equipping is broken out into 2 different experiences. The first is a classroom training. This is where you learn about the material, you learn about becoming a facilitator. It's highly experiential. But then the next part of the initial equipping is actually running what we call a camp, using the material and having a group of children or teens with you. And you're running this camp underneath the direction of those that are training you. The next step is completing a practicum where you'll have to run at least 1 camp using the children or the teens program alongside another certified facilitator in that modality. And of course, this must be reported to the THI database. And then finally, for both programs, you have to attend an advanced equipping. And at this training, this is where you refine some of your skills and you have the option to leave with a higher level certification. Now, I will say, this is the children and teens training modality as it stands right now. Over the past few years, THI has received feedback that the content in these programs is great. It's phenomenal. but the training aspect, the training requirement, and even what you need to put on one of these camps um, can be cumbersome, can be burdensome. So we have taken all that into consideration, and we are working on revising both the children and the teens programs. In the meantime, you can keep using them as they are if you're trained in them. There aren't too many training opportunities available for these programs, but if you happen to find one, sign up for it. You can see them available on the events page. But in the meantime, while we're working on revising these small group programs, we wanted to share with you the other materials that we've created and are now available, which brings me to our crisis response resources. There are 3 different locations in which you can find all of the crisis response resources that I am going to be sharing with you. The first is the THI website. Of course, we could find most things on the THI website. But you log in to the THI website, and in the materials library, you'll find specific crisis response folders, both for children and for teens. All of these resources are there available for you to download. And they are available to anyone regardless of your certification. Even if you haven't been trained in any trauma healing modalities, our crisis response materials are available to you. The second location is the Beyond Disaster website. This is a website that THI has created specifically for all of our crisis response resources. And on this website is a page dedicated for youth resources. And then finally, we have Bibles.com. Bibles.com is a platform that you can search for any of these materials. And most of these are available on Bibles.com, and they are free for digital download. So keep that in mind as I am walking you through these resources. The first resource that I'd like to share with you that falls into the crisis response category is called God is with Me. This is a Bible-based resource that is intended to help parents walk their children through times of uncertainty and help them cope. This is meant to be used as a family guide, so in a group setting as a family where the parent or the caregiver is leading the family through the resource. This resource is intended for children between the ages of 8 and 12. There are 2 different versions of God is with Me that are available, and you'll find the covers of both on this slide. The one on the top, this one follows a disaster storyline. The second one follows a refugee storyline. And there is absolutely no training that is required to use this resource. You can pick it up and simply begin using it. But we want to know that you're using this resource. So we ask that you please report to Trauma Healing Institute when you use this resource, regardless of the setting that you're putting this in, whether it's just sitting in your living room with your family or doing it at your church with a group of children. We want to know. So please report on God is with Me on the THI website. The second resource that I'd like to share with you is called Unstuck. This is specifically for youth or teens. This is once again another Bible-based resource that is designed to use with youth during times or after times of disruption. And there are a few different formats that you can use Unstuck. You can either use it in a small group setting where you're gathering groups of teens together. It can be used as a standalone journal where a youth downloads this and uses it all on their own, or it can be used as a family resource. And there are 2 different versions of Unstuck as well. On the top of the screen is our refugee edition. This one is a little bit older, but it follows the storyline of a refugee. And then the second version, which is the one we're most excited to share with you today, is the newest edition of Unstuck. It's our expanded edition. We just completed this resource about a month ago, and it has recently been put on Bibles.com and all of the websites that I shared with you. We spent a good part of last year creating this resource and piloting this resource, and we've received some really important feedback that I'll share with you momentarily. But the storyline of Unstuck Expanded Edition follows community violence, so specifically a school shooting. Once again, there are no training requirements to use this resource. It's intended for anyone to pick up, download, and start using right away. And similar to God is with me, we want to know that you're using Unstuck as well. So after you use this, please visit the THI website and report on it using the reporting form there. Here is a sneak peek of what's inside the Unstuck Expanded Edition. You'll see on the left side, this is the table of contents. There are 5 lessons in Unstuck. Some of this incorporates material from the Teens and Children's Trauma Healing Program, but once again, keep in mind the purpose of this material is to help people cope, not necessarily jumpstart the healing journey that many of us are familiar with in our small group programming. On the right side, you'll see that Unstuck also offers additional resources. We've created a few tutorial demonstration videos for certain activities that are used throughout Unstuck. So you can scan that QR code and find those videos. And then at the bottom of that picture on the right-hand side, there are a few ways that we want to hear from people. We'd love to receive feedback from participants using Unstuck, which is what that blue QR code, the top QR code, is for. And then there are a couple different ways for people to report. Like I said on the previous slide, if you're a trauma healing facilitator, log into the website and report using the healing group report form. But if someone is not trained as a facilitator, they can't access the report form, but we want to hear from them too. So we've created a separate report form for those who are not trained in any of the modalities and cannot access the report form. That is the second QR code on the bottom of that screen. So regardless of who you are, your certifications, please find the correct path to report on using this material. Here's some of the feedback that I said I would share with you. One of the quotes that we received from a participant that experienced Unstuck said, "It shows that I am not alone in my feelings and that people go through hard times, but God will come through and we can rely on him." And a really significant stat that we've received of all of the teens that we've surveyed and gathered their feedback on this, 100% of them said that they would join in this Unstuck small group again and or are willing to participate in something just like it. And it's this type of feedback that we need so we can continue to create resources that are accessible and relevant to our younger generations. Really quick recap for those of you that are trauma healing facilitators and you use the THI website to report on any of the materials, the crisis response materials that I just talked about. Log into the website. On the left-hand side, you see the My Reporting tab. You would select Healing Group, and then on the report form, you have the opportunity to select which material that you are reporting on. So this is just a quick snapshot of what the reporting journey would look like for you. The last resource that I want to talk about is also new to THI, and it's called Reconnect. Now, the purpose of Reconnect is slightly different from the crisis response materials as well as our small group program. Reconnect is a resource that was created to focus more on the emotional well-being of youth rather than trauma, grief, and loss and their journey through that. So specifically with Reconnect, this resource offers 5 simple practices that youth can learn for them to use when life begins to feel overwhelming. There's also a parent resource that goes alongside Reconnect, and this is specifically a 5-day Bible reading plan that walks parents through how to navigate stressful times with their youth. The purpose of this Reconnect resource is intended for those who are at least 13, but some of the practices that can be used in this resource for those that are younger than 13. We highly recommend just reading through the resource, using parental discretion, and seeing if this is appropriate for those under the age of 13. And to find Reconnect, you actually can't find it on the Beyond Disaster website on Bibles.com. You can find it by going to traumahealinginstitute.org/reconnect. And you'll receive a follow-up email that has all of this information linked as well as this PowerPoint. So at this time, I would like to invite Megan to come back on screen, and she is going to talk us through what we can look forward to with THI and then segue us into the live Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you again, Bree. This is tremendous news about some of these resources. There's been a lot of questions in the chat and some Q&A questions. So again, if you guys have any questions that you want to talk about in the live session, put them in the Q&A button right at the bottom of the toolbar, and then we'll get to them as we have time available. So as we look ahead, the Trauma Healing Institute, American Bible Society, we are committed to developing practical and effective resources over the next couple of years to help our youth navigate historical levels of trauma, anxiety, and depression, and other mental health issues impacting our younger generation. So I want you guys to recognize we have a handful of really good, effective, helpful resources, and there will be more coming. And that also reminds me to invite you guys to our social media platforms on Facebook, on Instagram, and we have a number of places, our YouTube channel. So feel free to join us on those platforms, and you guys will find out when these new resources become available. You can share resources with friends and networks easily. And just be more aware of what's happening with the Trauma Healing Institute. So go on our social media platforms, follow us, share our resources, and you'll kind of be in the know of what's coming up. And then one last reminder, reporting. If you are leading small groups or healing groups with our THI curriculum, whether it's with adults or whether it's with teens or whether it's even with our resources that we shared today, please take the time to report these activities. It is so important because these are what helps, like reporting helps us keep our costs low, and then it helps us offer resources for free. So it's critical to help us understand the effectiveness of our resources, and it provides a place for feedback. So make sure to, if you can, take time to report these activities. So now we're going to get into our Q&A portion. So if you guys, there's a bunch of questions that we're going to, that are in the queue right now. And so I'm going to start off with Bree. All right. So as one of the questions that came up, can I use Unstuck or Reconnect with kids younger than 13?
Yeah, very good question. It's a common question we get. As I said, I was going through each resource. THI recommends certain resources for certain ages. And specifically for Unstuck and Reconnect, we're saying at least 13 years old. For those that are younger than 13, of course, look at God is with me. But we would also leave it up to parental or caregiver discretion as well. We would recommend that you read through the resource yourself first, see if the storyline, the questions that are being asked seem appropriate for your children that are under 13, and then make a decision. But THI has recommendations, but we leave it up to parental discretion too.
Wonderful. Another question, what if the youth in the group that I'm leading need more help than I can give them?
Yeah, this is a common experience, whether you're a trained trauma healing facilitator or you're just picking up Unstuck and you're going to use it in your church. Um, I think it's really important that regardless of who you are and where you're doing this, church, your community, a ministry, a school, you are aware of what local resources that are around you that you can refer children and teens out to for higher levels of care. It's important to remember that what we create at Trauma Healing Institute is not meant to be mental health care. It's not meant to be counseling. We're not training practitioners. So there's pretty clear boundaries around what you can do with this resource and then when it's time to refer on to higher levels of care.
Wonderful. And this question along the same lines, will a person who leads Unstuck, the resource Unstuck, need a background check to facilitate this resource?
Yeah, it's highly likely that if you are using any of these resources in a school setting, a ministry setting, that some type of background check would be required. And this is to keep you safe and to keep the children safe, of course. I would say make sure that you are aware of what the policies and procedures are for not just your local area, but your state and your country as well. I know the US has childwelfare.gov as a website that you can go to review some of these policies. Canada, I'm sure, does as well. So, yes, it's very likely that leaders would have to provide proof of a background check, and usually that involves fingerprinting as well. The other aspect of this is understanding the boundaries around mandated reporting. Trauma healing facilitators and those using the material are not necessarily actual mandated reporters, but ethically, what is the right thing to do when you do hear stories that require reporting? So, once again, really important, understand what the policies and procedures are for that area, and you can always check your country and local area uh, requirements.
Awesome. Thank you. And here's a question that has come up. Do you have tools or resources for family violence or violence against teens? So these situations come up often in our youth and our teens. Do you have any resources or tools for those situations?
Not specifically for family violence. What I shared today, resource-wise, is currently what Trauma Healing Institute has available. The beauty of a lot of the resources that we create is they can be applied in multiple settings. The stories help children or teens relate, but the actual content, the activities, the exercises, the discussion questions apply to a variety of contexts. So, you can always check out what we have, see if it works for your situation. But at this time, there is no resource specifically dedicated to family violence.
Thank you. There is a question about, are these resources available for print? Or can they purchase them? Uh, can they purchase them? Where can they purchase them?
If you're looking for print versions, not all of these resources are available for print, but if they are, you can find them on Bibles.com. And if they are available for print, they're print on demand. That means we don't have a warehouse stocked with all of these resources. They would be custom printing your order. And that usually takes a little bit of time, extra time to purchase and then have delivered. So check on Bibles.com, see what is available for print, and just factor in that it's print on demand when you're ordering and your timeline of when you need these.
Yeah. And also, a lot of these resources that are downloadable can be easily printed as well. So we format them in a way that they can easily be printed off your own computer and printer at home. So they're easily, and that's what we are hoping to do, make resources accessible for people that they can implement them right away. There is another question around best practices in terms of what are some best practices for leaders working with teens? Now, I know if there's any other questions around this, I think one of the things that is a great uh, question that is coming up is like, if I'm not currently working with teens, especially around trauma, what are some good pointers or guidelines or best practices to work with teens?
Yeah, that's a very big question. And I'm actually going to uh, revert to the Unstuck Expanded Edition Leaders Guide has a number of tips and pointers around best practices for working with teens. So I'm not going to go through them right now, but we do have them documented and you can find them in the Unstuck Leaders Guide.
Wonderful. That's great that that trauma healing has those leaders tips and guides of working with teens and youth right in the resource itself.
Absolutely.
I love that. Let's see, there is a question. How can I get my church to use these resources? So there's a couple of people that have said these are great. How do I get my church like involved in using this in their youth group?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I would actually encourage the chat to help me out here. A lot of you are on this call because you have used or are planning on using this in your own setting. So I would encourage you drop in the chat some of the ideas that you've had or maybe what's worked well for you. Um, I think, regardless, of course, there's always going to be conversations that need to happen with church leadership so they understand the intention behind the material, what's the purpose, what are the child safety guidelines that have to be followed if you're going to use this type of resource in your church. So having them understand what it is, maybe even experience part of the material. Talking about it is one thing, helping someone experience it is another thing. And that's usually the best practice to get people on board. But I also look forward to seeing what the chat has to say to help with this question.
Mm, wonderful. Are these resources in different languages? And if not, if they don't have like Unstuck or God is with me in the language that I need, what do I do?
Yeah. So here is, I'll go resource by resource and the languages that we have available for each one. God is With Me, which is intended for children, the family guide, that is available in English, Spanish, and French, the disaster version. The refugee version of God is With Me is available in English, Ukrainian, and Russian. The Reconnect resource, which was the last one I showed that goes along with that 5-day parent Bible journey, that is currently only available in English. Now, Unstuck, the refugee version is available in English, in Ukrainian, and Russian. The newest Unstuck Expanded Edition is available in English and will soon be available in Spanish. We are finishing up the translation and the review process of the Spanish, and it will soon be made available on all of the websites that I shared. Now, if you are interested in having any of those materials in another language, you must fill out a translation request form. Unfortunately, you can't just pick up a material and begin translating it yourself and using it. All of the translations have to be there's quite a bit of criteria that has to go through. Someone has to go through if they want to translate the material, and it has to be properly vetted. So there is a translation request form that you have to fill out. You can also email materials@traumahealinginstitute.org to learn more or to receive this form. We have a materials project manager on staff. His name is Patrick, and he would be the one responding to your inquiry about translating any of these materials.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Um, let's see, how old should kids be to use these resources? Do you guys,
Yeah,
yeah, can you share a little bit more of the guidelines for the age groups?
yeah, I can absolutely do this again. So this is once again THI's recommendation for ages, and I'll give these ages in ranges. So specifically for Reconnect, we're saying between the ages of 13 and 18 years old. Unstuck is intended for those who are at least 13, and we've seen this used all the way up through like early 20s as well. So 13 up through, 20s. God is with Me is the resource intended for children, and that age recommendation is between the ages of 8 years old and 12 years old.
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, let's see. This has been really, really helpful, Bree. One question that I had, okay, if I am a training facilitator and technically not trained in the teens or the children's, should I be holding a teen healing group?
Yeah, so in terms of the two programs, the two small group programs that we have, Life Hurts, Love Heals for teens and Healing Hearts Club for children, those programs are meant to be used by those who are certified in the material, by someone who has at least attended an initial equipping and has left the initial equipping as an apprentice facilitator. If you are not certified in the program, you should not be using the program because you have not learned um, the way in which this material should be used, the facilitation requirements that we want to see, as well as best practices for working with youth and children according to THI. So to answer the question, if you're not certified, you should not be using the programs. But please check the events page to see when a training is happening, if a training is happening, so you can get certified.
Wonderful. Thank you. Um, there's a there's another question about so Deborah, she shared, I'm gonna be going to Tijuana, Mexico to work with women and children who've been affected by domestic violence. What resources would you recommend?
Yeah, Deborah, that's a beautiful ministry. I would say specifically for teens that you will be working with, check out the Unstuck, either the expanded edition, since it deals with community violence, but then there's also the refugee edition as well. I think either one of those or both could serve you. THI has for adults, there are a few beyond disaster resources that is specifically for crisis that you could look into, as well as any of our trauma healing basics materials, traumahealingbasics.org that you can check out. And if you're certified in the classic adult program, there is a lesson dedicated to domestic violence that you could use as well in a healing group setting.
Wonderful. So we are getting near our time. We'll probably have enough for like one or two more questions. Um, oh, here's a good question. What resources should I use next after Unstuck with teens? So let's say people are using the Unstuck program with a teen group in their youth group. What would they do next after that?
Yeah, that's always such a popular question. People experience something that Trauma Healing Institute creates, and then it's like, what's next? Um, the beauty of God is with Me, Unstuck, Reconnect, any of those is it's meant to be a journey. It's meant to push people or to encourage people, youth, to attend some type of small group, healing group setting. And we are committed to continuing to create those resources. Now, as I said earlier in the presentation, we do have the small group programs currently, Life Hurts, Love Heals for teens and Healing Hearts Club for children that exist. And we are working on revising those. Those programs can still be used by those who are trained in them, but we will, when it's available, we will share with you all the revised version of both of those programs. And that's a pretty practical next step, is having them experience something like Unstuck and then following up with some type of healing group material.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see. So there's someone that's asking, I am certified from trauma healing, but for the adult version. Now you went over this, but I think it's worth like explaining a little bit more again. So if someone is certified in trauma healing in the adult program, are they certified to lead in the children's and the teens program as well? Can you just share that? Because I think it's worth, these questions keep on coming up, so I think it's worth repeating
Yeah,
again.
happy to clarify that. Um, Certifications across programs and modalities, especially adults, children's, teens, do not overlap. Each program has its own separate certification. So if you are trained in the classic adult program, you are only certified to lead adult healing groups. You cannot lead children and teens healing groups. The beauty of actually being trained in the adult program first is currently the program models for children and teens is we want people to have experienced the adult program, whether it's in a healing group setting or they've trained in the adult program. But if you want to lead children and teens groups, you must be certified in those programs to lead them.
Wonderful. And I think I think that is a lot of the questions that have been answered. Sorry, there's more coming about. Although you may not be trained in the teen group, are you still able to use these resources? So the resources for Unstuck and Reconnect, can they still use those resources if they're not trained in the curriculum, the
Mhm.
classic trauma healing, the children's trauma healing curriculum?
Yes, I'll repeat this again, and it's also in the PowerPoint when you'll receive a copy of this. To use resources like God is with me, Reconnect, Unstuck, you do not have to be trained in anything to use them. The purpose of these materials is to help people cope, and we're not going to gate them by requiring people to be trained. They are intended for anyone to pick up and use, regardless of your experience with Trauma Healing Institute and what you're trained in.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And as we had mentioned from the beginning, in trauma healing, we have long developed, or years ago, have developed a children's and teens program, but the need was so great, and the need continues to mount for resources, especially for our
Mhm.
younger generation. And this is what has like spurred us on to develop resources that are accessible, that people, ministers, pastors, youth leaders can use immediately. And that
Yes.
is what we wanted to share with you today, our Unstuck resources, God is with me resource, Reconnect resources, and more to come. So we are excited to share with you these resources. And really, we would love to invite you on this program to be a part of changing the story, to be a part of the catalysts who are engaging this younger generation in the process of healing, of recovering, of building up resilience in these places where they are struggling. And we believe that these resources can be really effective in helping that process. So now, as we close out our time, I just wanted to say thank you again, Bree, for bringing us trauma healing's resources around that we've been developing for youth, for teens, and for young adults. So as we close out, what I'd love for you to do is to share in the chat anything that you learned today that was something new. Um, as well as I'm gonna, as you guys close out, there's going to be a 4-question survey that we would love for you to fill out. It's very quick, but it helps us to make sure that these lunch and learns are good, effective, and have the right topics that you guys want to talk about. So please fill that out. And thank you for joining us today. We look forward to meeting with you the next time. So our next Lunch and Learn, be on the lookout. It's going to be at the beginning of May, and it's going to be a really fun topic as well. So be on the lookout for that and register, sign up. Thank you again for all of your questions, all of your engagement, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks all. Bye.